Welcome to part 2 of the B18 teardown video. Now in the first part we pulled off the cylinder head and inspected the cylinders. We also stripped down the cylinder head, checked the cam and the cam caps. In this video we will be pulling apart the bottom end to see whether we got a good deal or whether we got scammed. Okay, so the news is questionable. I hope that it ended up going goopy like this because the car was sitting for 2 years. So that's why the oil looks like this, and I hope it wasn't driven like this. Luckily it probably went like this because the car sat for very long. The engine sat for very long, and before that even, I don't know if the car was driven that this engine came out of. So yes, I mean, it doesn't look, if you look at this, it doesn't look too bad, but it does look like this engine has been cleaned up at some point, because you can see there is some build up and then there's cleaner areas. So yes, it's definitely been rebuilt, but I don't know, this looks a bit questionable. Luckily it looks like it is just thick oil. Doesn't feel like there's anything else in here. Disgusting. Oil pan, same story, very black, very goopy. Oh. Luckily I don't feel any, like shavings or anything. Okay, everything is loose, so this is going to be the first time I also see this. What we don't want is, we don't want anything to be blue discolored in here, because that normally means heat. So the rod cap should not be discolored or be able to move around when you grab onto them. Let's see. Ugh, this stuff is nasty. So this looks okay. To be honest, they all look okay. Now I will say this engine looked like it was very neglected at some point. There's a lot of very, very black oil and stuff in here, and then it looks like probably when they rebuilt it they cleaned everything up, and then it probably went for its second round of neglect. However, the second time around looks a bit better, because you can see like build up like this. I bet this whole thing was this color. Then with rebuilding it and putting new oil in it, it probably cleaned itself up quite a bit, because some areas look good, like the edge of the crank. This looks practically brand new. Same with this. However, if you look on the side of the block here, there is some areas where you can see there's clearly some signs of very, very dirty oil in here. So I don't know, if you look in here, oh my goodness, there's more of those blobs of oil in here. So yeah, it's not great, but the good thing is there's no clicking noise coming from this rod. Same with this one, can't move it around, and there's no discoloration. So normally these will go blue, then they saw a lot of heat. We will have to take these main caps off and then check those bearings, and we're also going to take the rod caps off and check those bearings. And then basically we'll know whether we're going to be using this engine or not, because that's basically going to be the determining factor. We already know the sleeves are a bit iffy, but I'm still thinking I can save that of my own. But if I have to do crank work and all that kind of stuff, we'll probably just pause this project right here and go with that project over there. But for now, so far so good. Okay, we're going to start with taking apart the rod caps. Now you can take them out in any order because they are independent, but you do want to crack this one loose, then crack that one loose, and then take them apart slowly like you do with everything else, because you can damage the rod cap. Normally it's more prone to damage when you are assembling it than disassembling it, but why risk it? Don't just zip them off with an impact. I would say crack them loose and then take them off. Next we are going to do these main caps. Now you're going to do them in reverse order, and also crack them loose one at a time, quarter turn until they all don't have tension on them anymore, and then you can zip them out. Don't just impact and zip them off, because again you can warp something if you just zip all these out. If you intend to use the engine again, never use the impact here. Okay, so rod cap bolts are off. Now it can be difficult to get these to actually break free, so normally what I do is I will just hit the stud with a rubber mallet. I don't have a rubber mallet, but going to use the back of my hammer. This is rubber, so I'm just going to tap it to see if we can separate the rod cap. Looks like a no. Okay, so this bearing doesn't look bad. There's quite a bit of wear on it, and you can see there's a polished section in the middle, but you know, this wasn't about to fail or, you know, destroy itself. This can just be, you know, wear from high mileage. So, you know, this one looks good. This is cylinder number 2. Now, one very important thing, you cannot mix these up. You cannot rotate them, you cannot mix them up. It goes on here like that. If you put this rod cap later on when you assemble on this side, you're very likely going to have a bearing failure. So that's if your engine even wants to rotate. So very important, never mix this up. That's why I'm putting it back here. I just wanted to inspect the bearing, and when I take this out, I'll take the piston out, put the rod cap back on it, and you know, just keep it like that. They do sometimes have numbers on the side, so you can see this one says 3, but I have had it before where 2 of the numbers is the same and they pretty much line up the same, and you end up actually not knowing which one is which and where it's supposed to go. Anyway, let's look at this one. So as you guys can see, this one also says 3. So that's why you should probably mark these now. So what you can do is use a punch and just punch these on the side, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 dot, 2 dots, 3 dots, 4 dots. And then you punch it on the rod cap and on the rod so that you don't mix them up later. So very important, if you're planning to reassemble this engine with these parts, do not mix up these rod caps. Now the bearing on number 3 is substantially better than number 2 because it doesn't have that polished section in the middle. However, it does have polished sections on the edges. So, you know, this bearing isn't bad. Doesn't really have any, you know, major signs of failure on them. And rod bearings is normally the first thing to go. Now, yes, the upper bearing does take more strain. So the bearing that's still in there, that one normally takes the most strain. But if your bearings look like this, it probably means that this engine is still okay. Okay, so looking at the piston, and this doesn't look bad at all. Let's clean off the skirt here. Okay, maybe I was speaking too soon. So we do have some scratches on this skirt. However, I can't catch my nail in any of them. This normally just means that maybe while we were rotating it there was a bit of dirt stuck in here. Okay, so same story with the other skirt. A lot of scratches, but nothing you can catch a nail in. Secondly, it's also good practice to mark your pistons. If you take the piston out and you're putting it back, you have to put it back exactly where you found it. So we know that this is piston 2. I'll probably mark it up top here, and then when we reassemble, this piston will go back in cylinder number 2 because that's where it's been, you know, wearing itself into everything. So you can put them in other places, but it is best practice to put it back exactly where you took it out. And again, do not mix up these rod caps. As you guys can see, I put it back on, put the bolts back in, so that this can't get mixed up with one of the other ones. So here's the bearing for cylinder number 2 at the top. As you can see, a lot more wear on the top side. It's a bit more, you know, it's worn away a bit more of the metal, so it's actually quite a dark grey now. Nothing I can, oh, there's a small thing here I can catch my nail on. But, you know, overall, I think these bearings do show a bit of neglect, because you can see there's definitely something that was scratching up this bearing, which normally means that your oil was dirty. And, you know, from what we can tell, the oil was dirty. So I'm kind of thinking that this engine was just neglected. To be honest, these are actually the original Honda bearings. So either they rebuilt it using original bearings, or these are still the original bearings, which I think is the case, because there you can still see the PR4. It has that logo, and you have a color code on here as well. So probably the original bearings from, what, 30 years ago. That's not bad for 30 years. Keep in mind, 30 years of neglect. Okay, we have the cam caps off and the crank is looking fine. There is a few, you know, scratch marks or score marks, but you can't actually feel anything. You can't catch a nail on it at all. So this is actually very good. Same with this one, can't catch a nail on it. You can see there is, you know, there's a bit of wear on it, but, you know, it looks minimal. If we rotate it to the center too, this one looks very good as well. Doesn't look like there's anything wrong with that one. What I'm going to do now is take off this back cover. It has 5 10mm bolts, a bit tricky to get in here to get them out. Other side, same oil pump. We have to take off the oil pump. Before that, you have to take these pulleys off. Can be a bit tricky. There's a 19mm bolt on here that's quite tight. Now you can lock the crank on this side, so there is a hole here that you can use to lock it, or you can put a mallet in here which will stop the engine from rotating, but, you know, that's not recommended. That's not how you should do it. I'm not going to say how I did it. Anyway, so there's 5 bolts here as well to take off this oil pump, since we already took off the pulley. So I'm going to take out these bolts, take off the end covers, and then we're going to break loose the crank caps, obviously starting from the outside in and progressively loosening them. Okay, all the main caps are loose. I'm going to take them off now and, you know, inspect the bearings. Let's start with the middle one. Okay, so this is not looking good. These marks all over the bearing is most likely from contamination. So if you do not service your engine, what happens is the oil actually blocks up the oil filter. There is a relief valve, so a bypass valve, and then all the oil basically just bypasses your filter. And then stuff like this, contamination, ends up in your bearings. Now the bearing is designed to absorb contamination, so it doesn't destroy your crankshaft. So contamination will go and sit inside your bearing. It will basically be forced into the bearing, and it will end up making specks like this. Okay, that's not good. Yeah, that is substantial scoring. And yes, you can catch a nail in that. This is the first worrying bearing. So here we have a combination of the two. This one also has the weird pitting. But it also has some polishing in the middle. Not good. Yeah, this one is pretty scratched as well. It has the same pitting thing, and you know, you can catch your finger in these scratches. Next I'm going to just clean up the crank and we can have a look at that. Okay, so the only one that's quite bad is this one. This one has, you know, noticeable scoring. I'm struggling to catch a nail in it, but you can feel that. So I can feel that there's scoring here. This one actually looks quite nice. I don't know, these are quite smooth. It looks like it's only this one that's scored up. I'm not sure how, because, you know, you would expect everything to be in much worse condition than what it is if you look at the condition of the bearings. However, the only one that is in quite bad condition is this one, where it's still smooth. Can't catch a nail in anything, but I can feel that there is some grooves in this one. I'm going to pull out the crankshaft now, and then we're going to check the bearings at the bottom, and then, you know, inspect the crankshaft some more. So these have the exact same. There's like weird pitting marks all over them, and then a lot of wear. Now looking at these bearings, you can see this one at the end is very worn. It is into the copper part of the jacket. These are still at the white metal part, so you know, that one doesn't look too bad. That one looks pretty worn. That one looks worn. That one is kind of worn, but this one at the end, you can see definitely has taken the most of it, because it's right into the copper part. Now it doesn't look like it was failing. It doesn't look like it was getting ready to spin or, you know, destroying itself. So, you know, all these bearings kind of look like very high mileage, weird wear and damage to them, but I'm pretty sure this engine with these bearings in this condition would have still run if you would do, you know, just put oil in it and start it again without stripping it down like we're doing now. I am 80% sure that this would still run, because you can see none of the bearings actually failed. They just, you know, they probably got contaminated with something. Here's the, you know, bottom bearings. Not good condition at all, especially this one. Okay, so we have everything laid out here. So, you know, all in all, this is not exactly good news. We have completely cooked bearings on basically all of them. Surprisingly, the crank doesn't look too bad. However, looking at this last journal, we're definitely going to have to cut the crank. So we'll probably cut the crank 10, and then here we have a ring that is bent. Not sure if that was like that. I'm kind of thinking it was. I don't think that was me. And also we have, you know, a little bit of rust in these sleeves, so we may have to bore these out. I do not want to bore these out, and I do want to keep using these pistons, but this is going to have to go to engineering to, you know, get completely redone, and that's going to take some time. It's going to take some money, so we may actually go ahead with the Forge D series in the meantime. I think that will be quicker and cheaper, because, you know, I already spent the money on getting all the parts to actually build it, where this is a, you know, it's a new expense that's, we're still going to do it. We're still going to build this engine. It is still going to go into one of the cars. We may actually get another Civic at some point, but for now I don't think we are going to do the B swap. Now, if you guys do want one of these manuals I was using to, you know, with the assembly and disassembly of this engine and, you know, the other engines I do, check the description. There is a link, and if you do buy one, that will help out the channel. There's also a coupon code that will get you a 20% discount. I'll also link stuff like, you know, the ARP stuff and, you know, the parts we're using for that engine. Also link that in the description. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. See you all in the next one.